If you really loved me, you'd know what I need. You're not man enough. I'm just being honest. 3 simple phrases. Sound familiar. But what if they're not just words? What if they're weapons? Have you ever felt confused? In love, as if it's a test you never signed up for? Have you been made to prove your worth? Your masculinity, your emotions, all under the disguise of honesty? Today, we dive into these subtle yet devastating forms of manipulation. Because real love isn't mind-reading, masculinity isn't a challenge, and honesty must come with empathy. If you've ever felt hurt, but couldn't explain why, if you've stayed silent when honesty felt like a dagger to the heart, then this video is your safe space, your moment of clarity. Subscribe now, not just for this episode, but for a journey that reclaims your voice, your boundaries, and your truth. 1. Is love a connection, or is it a test? Because when love becomes about passing invisible exams, where the answers are hidden, and the rules change without warning, that's not intimacy. That's manipulation wrapped in emotional mystique. I want you to imagine this. You're standing in a quiet kitchen. The person you love is distant, but says nothing. You ask, is something wrong? And the reply comes cold. If you loved me, you'd already know. Your chest tightens not because of what was said, but because of what it implies. Suddenly, love isn't something you give, it's something you have to prove. Again, and again, and again. I once met a man named Michael, mid-50s, kind, thoughtful, former school counselor. He told me over coffee one day, I spent 10 years of my marriage guessing what she needed, guessing when I had failed, guessing what word would finally make her smile again. He smiled as he said it, but there was sadness behind his eyes. You see, Michael didn't have a problem expressing love. He wrote notes, brought flowers, showed up, but every time he missed one unspoken cue, every time he failed to just know, the silence came, the coldness, the guilt trip, and here's what he told me that broke my heart. I wasn't afraid of being wrong. I was afraid of being punished for not being psychic. Now, I'm not saying communication should always be easy, and I'm definitely not saying one person is always to blame. But this idea, this belief that love must be proven through mind reading, is dangerous. Psychologists call it expectation projection. It's when one partner silently assigns a task to the other without saying a word, and then measures their love based on how well they perform it. But Stoic philosophy saw it earlier, and perhaps more clearly. Epictetus wrote, "We are not disturbed by things, but by the views we take of them." The modern version, it's not what happens in the relationship, it's what we assume it means. When someone says, if you loved me, you just know, they're not asking for love. They're demanding validation on their terms, at their timing, without ever having to be vulnerable enough to ask for it directly. But vulnerability, that's where real love lives. I want you to think about this. Have you ever felt like you were in trouble, but didn't know why? Like the person you care about most is disappointed in you, but won't tell you what you did? That's what emotional landmines feel like. And in that moment, your brain isn't working on connection or clarity. It's working on survival. You're analyzing past conversations. You're decoding silence. You're tiptoeing around tension. And every time you fail to guess right, the message is the same. You don't love me enough. But that's not love. That's emotional debt interest. Charged daily. Love isn't proven through perfect guesses. It's shown in effort, in presence, in conversations that feel clumsy but honest. It's not, you should just know. It's, can I tell you what I need right now? Because here's the truth. Even the most attuned, emotionally intelligent, spiritually grounded partner can't read minds, and expecting them to isn't romantic, it's unreasonable. We grow up with stories, movies, books, songs where the ideal partner just knows. They show up with flowers without being asked. They sense a mood shift without a word. They rescue you from your own silence. But the problem with that fantasy, it kills real relationships, because real love happens in reality, where people sometimes say the wrong thing, where they miss signs, where they're distracted, or tired, or human. The Stoics remind us again and again, clarity is kindness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In relationships, that means stop measuring love by what someone should know, and start building love on what both of you are willing to say. Because real love doesn't grow in silence. It grows in dialogue, in the messy, brave act of speaking needs aloud, even when it feels awkward. Especially when it feels awkward. If you've been in a relationship where you constantly had to guess, where love felt more like a test than a safe space, you are not alone. But I want you to know this: you don't have to keep earning love through exhaustion. You don't have to play a game where the rules keep changing. And you don't have to be a mind reader to be worthy of love. You just have to be willing to listen, to ask, to show up with humility, not perfection. And you deserve a partner who believes the same. So if you're tired of walking on eggshells, if you're ready to trade confusion for clarity, if you believe, like I do, that love should be grounded, not guessed, because here we don't punish silence, we break it with truth, with courage, and with kindness. Two, you're not man enough. No yelling, no aggression, just quiet confidence, but beneath it lies a torrent, not of emotion, but of calculated intent. These words aren't spoken to uplift, they're offered to destabilize. I want you to pause and imagine this. You're sitting across from someone you care about. Maybe after a long day or a misunderstanding, you speak up, set a boundary, offer an opinion, share a need, and her eyes sharpen, voice calm but unwavering. You're not man enough. Her voice doesn't break, but the silence that follows, that's the crack in your confidence. Because it's not a question, it's a verdict, a quiet demand for submission. Let me tell you about Daniel, a man in his early 40s, former college football coach. He was generous with his time, loyal in love, and quiet in his strength. After his divorce, he met someone he thought was different, intelligent, engaging, someone he trusted. But after a few months, he noticed a pattern. He'd say something gentle, reasonable, like, "I need a few hours this weekend to recharge." She'd raise an eyebrow and say, "Not man enough to handle a date night?" Or when he suggested a disagreement shouldn't define them, her voice would drop, "You're not man enough to stand up to me." It was always a challenge, a prodding, like testing his strength, not to connect, but to provoke. By the time he reached out, he told me, "I feel like I walk on glass. Every time I try to be honest, I'm made to feel weaker. And the stronger I try to be, the less I recognize who I am." There's a psychological tactic at play here. It's called identity-based provocation. Instead of attacking you directly, it undermines your sense of self, masquerades as banter, tests, or even romance, but really, it's manipulation. And Stoicism, it foresaw this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "To live happily is an inward power." It's not awarded by others' definitions of strength or weakness. When someone labels you not man enough, they're not defining your manhood or your strength. They're questioning your boundaries, your self-respect, and your emotional geography. And if your response is to fight back, you're stepping into their arena on their terms. You're reacting, you're proving, you're subscribing to a story they scripted. A stoic reaction. You withdraw, not out of defeat but clarity. You say nothing, because you know your presence is your answer. Have you ever felt the same tightness in your chest? The subconscious question that pops up, am I enough? Because words like those aren't merely heard, they're absorbed. They grow roots in your mind. They echo when you're alone and self-doubt whispers. But the problem isn't the echo. It's the space we give it to breathe. So I want to ask you, have you ever taken a pause, really stopped and asked yourself, why do I feel so depleted after the conversation? Because feeling less of yourself isn't always catalyzed by dramatic conflict. Sometimes it's sown with subtle insults and quiet emasculation. Now, here's what working on yourself looks like through a stoic lens. Notice the pattern. Even the calmest provocateurs have patterns. Recognize when this phrase appears over and over. Detach from the bait. Don't engage. Don't rise to prove them wrong. Silence isn't weakness, it's clarity. Anchor your identity. Define manhood by your internal values, not external validation. Marcus Aurelius again, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Choose your presence. You are strong when your calm remains unshaken even in provocation. Boundaries are armor. If someone persistently uses identity as leverage, you don't have to prove anything. You politely and firmly step away. Let me be clear, this isn't avoidance, it's intelligence. This isn't detachment, it's alignment. A friend of mine, David, once shared his story. He'd invited his partner to a speaking event he was hosting, a subject deeply meaningful to him. After the event, she commented, "You're not man enough to talk about feelings in front of a crowd." It rattled him not because she questioned his voice, but because she claimed to know his limits more than he did. He had a choice: engage in emotional spat or walk away. He chose serenity. He rested in the truth of his experience. He reaffirmed the value of his work privately with himself, trusted friends, quiet acknowledgement. He didn't argue. He didn't over-explain. He didn't justify. He just reaffirmed within himself, "My worth isn't determined by her judgment." If you hear you're not man enough, it's not a call to fight. It's an invitation to self-reflect. Who gives you permission to define your worth? Do you accept who you are when no one is watching or only under scrutiny? Stoic advice: self-control is strength. When your identity isn't tethered to someone else's approval, their opinions hold no power. And there's no shame in stepping away from a game you weren't made to play. You don't have to prove your manhood in someone else's theater. Your worth isn't measured by how much you can endure. Your identity isn't negotiable. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you sovereign. Because strength doesn't roar in reaction. Strength stands firm in stillness. And the most courageous step you can take is to walk away with quiet dignity. If this resonates, if you've felt the weight of words meant to control, rather than connect, don't stay in the noise. We'll explore more insights to help you live anchored, not adrift. Because here, we choose presence over provocation, clarity over conflict, peace over proving. 3. Have you ever heard someone say, "I'm just being honest," and walked away from that moment feeling unexpectedly wounded? It sounds straightforward, like a badge of integrity. But let's pause and reflect. When honesty is delivered as a weapon, is it still honesty at all? I want you to imagine this. You wake up one morning, heart full of a new idea, maybe starting a creative project, exploring a new city, or making a bold life change. You share it. You sparkle with excitement. And then she looks at you, flat and steady, and says, "I'm just being honest." That sounds completely impractical. No light, no warmth, only the cold echo of her words bouncing in your chest. And just like that, you pause, you shrink. You begin to question yourself, not because you doubt the dream, but because someone called it useless under the guise of honesty. Here's the truth. Not every honest comment is an act of sincerity. Most times, it's a shield, a way to deliver judgment while sidestepping responsibility. Psychologists call this hurt disguised as honesty. It gives someone permission to punish you emotionally and then claim moral high ground. But the Stoics offer a different lens. Epictetus said, "What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about them." In other words, words alone don't wound, it's how we interpret them that makes them feel like arrows. If someone uses "I'm just being honest" to undermine your goals, your beliefs, your creative life, it's not courage, it's control. Let me tell you about Kathy. She was 24, full of bold ambition, and wanted to start her own marketing agency. She told a friend, Jenna, who replied with a flat, "Honestly, who do you think you are to start something that big?" Jenna smiled. She sounded supportive. But Kathy felt herself deflating, like all the air had been sucked out of the room. Weeks later, Kathy found herself in therapy, trying to rebuild that spark she lost when her dream was dismissed as unrealistic. It wasn't the intention. Kathy didn't suspect malice, but the impact was real, because words carry weight. And sometimes the heaviest are wrapped in sincerity. Neuroscience tells us that words perceived as criticism activate the same neural pathways as physical pain. A study at Carnegie Mellon University found one harsh word can elevate cortisol, the stress hormone, more than a slap to the hand. Now imagine someone firing darts of honesty masked as fact, over and over again. Each one chips away not at your dreams, but at your sense of safety. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic minds, wrote, "If someone does wrong to you, it is because they are mistaken." He gave us the approach: receive then respond, not by echoing the hurt, but by grounding yourself in better truth. So let me ask you, have you ever agreed to step back because someone described your passion as impractical? Have you stopped sharing your ideas for fear you'd be met with cold honesty? Because if so, it wasn't harmless. It was a gateway, a gateway that turns sharing into shrinking, creating into cowering, trust into anxiety, and you deserve better. Here are the steps. To respond STOIC style, notice the emotional shift: a chill, a tightness, a pause. That's your inner compass warning you. Paraphrase reply with calm curiosity when you say that. I hear concerns, can you help me understand? Invite clarity or a frame if they say, it's just practical. Then you respond, I understand practicality is essential, but here's why this spark matters to me. Draw your boundary if it keeps coming. Say, I appreciate your honesty, but I'm asking for support, not skepticism. Anchor in your values. Remind yourself you're not imperfect or naive. You're human, creative, allowed to dream, and allowed to pursue that dream. This doesn't require confrontation, just clarity. You shift from victim to curator, from silence to grace. If you hold your breath when someone says, I'm just being honest, you're not alone. Many of us do. But remember, honesty isn't an excuse. It's not a free pass to wound. When someone says, I'm just being honest, here's your invitation to stand tall in truth, to love yourself enough to speak your needs clearly, and to walk away from words that chip away at your soul. Because you deserve more than statements that start with, I'm just being honest, only to end in emotional erosion. If this message resonates, know you're among friends. Click subscribe. We build a space here where dreams aren't called impractical, where clarity replaces doubt, and self-belief is welcomed home. And let's walk forward together in honesty that heals, in kindness that empowers, and in love that frees. There are things we cannot change, what others say, how they act, but there is always one thing we can protect: our inner stillness. Silence isn't the absence of words, it's the presence of clarity. We're not here to fight the world, but to move through it with depth, awareness, and grace. If this path speaks to you, subscribe, not for just another video, but to be part of a quiet circle of minds choosing calm over chaos and strength through understanding.